always on. You can always drop me a message, and I will answer if you forget things. But you're taking notes, so all right.
Một tiếng nữa thôi, cố lên mọi người ơi, một tiếng nữa thôi. Let's do a little exercise, okay? With Python. So we do a simulation. All right? Some small simulation. With this linear, local linear, and so on and so forth. Well, this is actually this stuff that we are doing. They generally show up in the beginning of data science courses. Oftentimes, right? So in the beginning, then you have, if you have a pure data science class, you want to start with regression, this is what I do. I mean, I do a bit more of lasso and rich regressions too, but I don't do with you. Right? So first of all, the conditions become a little bit tricky, but I think you can manage, but I haven't covered them now. Maybe next cohort. For you, I think this is Rồi sao? Làm thầy làm Messi đi chơi học nữa đi. Thầy không làm này cho mình đi mà.
But I want to do the derivatives a little bit. In derivatives, one can also estimate differently, but let's just say like so. But let's say we have a this is not marker, board marker. That is a marker.
So
Board terminal. It's all right. It will be white.
It's fine. You can use it.
So let's say you have a function like a plus bx plus cx squared plus bx third. Some polynomial. Plus,
làm sao
right?
làm sao thì sao?
And let's say we have expected value of u given x is 0. So then the expected value of y given x at the value x becomes a plus bx plus bx squared plus bx 3. Let's look at the marginal effect of x and 1, which will be the derivative x and x with respect to x, which is b plus 2c x plus 3b x squared. So that's a quadratic marginal effect. So we want to estimate this function non-parametrically in the sense that we say, all right, so that is the true data generating persons. We know that. And then we do the estimation
interested in this, in the marginal effect. So not only we want M, the functional form, but also the derivative. So that's sort of the marginal effect. Marginally at each point, and how does M react to X? So let's do some little simulation, numpy as empty. Let's bring them all. Maybe we do local, leave one out. So let's start with generating the data. Alright, so let's say sample size is 1,000. Okay. And let's see. So let's say we have the sample size n to be 10,000 or 1,000. Let's have the NumPy random generator seed at 0. So we have the same results. And let's generate X from say, let's say also the line space. You can have it random. Let it be randomly generated in random variables. So just, I go away from the previous one. So here we have a rand n of size n. Right, so that is X. Let's fix A, B, C, D to say 1, 0.1, 0.5, and 0.05. So this is ABC. Okay, so let's generate U. That is empty random n also size n. So these will be all arrays. And then let's go on with having one. So y will be A plus B times X capital plus C times X whole to the power of 2 plus D times X to the power of 3 and plus D. What does it contain? Alright, this is X, this is Y. Let's plot them. So PLT, let's do a scatter plot of X and Y. PLT will do it. So that is how we use it. This is very old. And let's change those. It's gonna be this one is very small, so it doesn't actually show up. Alright, now it's better. Aha. Alright, so these are the data. That's cubic function. Good. But of course, this is so easy. Right? So if I see that, I don't need to think of non-parametrics, I will just fit a cubic. It looks like but that's a simulation, so that's what we're going to do. So now what I want to do is, I want to go and estimate this using Nagaraya Watson. Okay? But then I will not do it the way we did it yesterday. Alright? So let me wait so that we start.
Nước hầm của mình nó khác không?
it's ready. Great. So we do it with the local linear and sort of the weighted least squares as we did it just now. Alright. So I mean that's sort of a little bit easier. So you don't need to essentially think of the curve and so on and so forth, sort of do the summations and so on. Right? So, so we can do it in a, as you derived just now with the weighted least squares. Like that. That was the weighted least square. So we do it with weighted least squares. A bit easier. Alright. So let's go on. So let's generate some x bands. S and P in the space. Starting from the minimum, going to the maximum. Well, let's say 100 data points. Alright, so these are the x values. Alright, so now, well, we can do the, let's set h to, well, roughly n to the power of minus 1/5. Exercise for 2 nights. Find value of h using yes, so do not. Sorry, I'm just taking your time. You can have beers, but see the program. So that is what we have. Now for x in x values, now we go here. So here we have m, let's say it's infinity, this. And now we don't do the local linear, we rather the simple regression. Right? Simple modular ones. Not local linear first, we just do that. And then later we do the local linear. So here we need stats models. Because we want to do regression. The API as a stem. And now we sort of have a model. The model is Sn dot weighted least squares, like the ULS. But we need to basically class the weights. So let's calculate the weights. Weights we get from sine pi. Stats. As from that we import the norm. Alright, now we go in and then calculate the weights. What are the weights? They are norm.pdf of, let's open x minus x divided by you're with me, you understand what I'm doing, right? Sorry, I was just focusing on getting this right, and not making a mistake. So I'm using weighted least squares, not OLS, but rather WLS, so weighted least squares. In the sense that we minimize in C, well, or let's call it M, summation I, yi minus C to the power of 2, but multiplied by weights. Alright, so weights come from the X. Essentially. You're happy? Okay. So now, I mean, once we do this regression, then what we need to get is as our M, right? So let's just leave it. We saw it very nicely. We need the constant of this minimization. So we need one parameter that we estimate, and that will be our M. Alright. Now we're doing it with the weighted least squares makes it a little bit easier. Alright. So now we need the here we say M dot okay model dot what was it params, right? In the first position. We need an I log. That will be a series, right? Let's run it and see if it works. As we know, attributes params, what is it? So what does it have? Oh, yes. Enormous. You have to fit.
Resolve.
Now it will be a wrapper. But if you're somebody who is interested in doing some programming in Python, I don't know, sort of some like project, master thesis type stuff. If you have interest, let me know. I have projects. So that you can add some packages to Python. Alright, so to this stats models. Let's go with the params. Which is just one value. Now we have it all in place. There are 100, there are 10 values, and so on and so forth. So plt.plots, x values, and plot on the grid, plt.show. Yeah. So that's the sum, and this is the function. I mean, this is with the n to the power of 1/5, yeah? So, as I said, so you can do an exercise and then find this even out you take and then find the h. So let me wait for you.
I see that like the lattice value really really capture because it is far away because like the data the shape is really
Similar.
yeah that's like
you put them on top of each other.
Yeah.
That is what you want, right? X and Y. Color, was it for color or was it for Where are the programmers? No, it is like that. Yeah. So yeah, when the end it doesn't get right, yeah. And that's sort of the problem that we discussed earlier today in the morning. There's a sort of, I told you that, yeah, well, at the very end, then you don't even sort of have enough observations. So sort of you get off. But in the meantime, so in the middle, then sort of you get it okay. So if you change the bandwidth, then sort of make it smaller, so that the bias is smaller, then it will go up. There also will be a lot of, let's do it. Let's actually a smaller, make a smaller bandwidth. Let's see what is h, that is that number. Let's divide it by 2. Well, you see, the bias reduced. We wanted to reduce the bias, sort of, then you can go up by reducing the bias, then sort of bias becomes smaller, variance becomes bigger, sort of moves a little bit up and down if you see the curve, right? And it gets more, so it gets closer, right? So you reduce the bias, that is what your wish was. But I mean, then you can do a cross validation. Maybe this is too big, the sigma minus n to the power of minus 1/5. Maybe that's a large number. But what I want to do too is to get the marginal effect, which is b plus 2cx plus 3b equals x squared, right? So that's sort of the other complete that I want to do. So that will be a quadratic function. And then we can also get and then look at it, sort of plot it, and then see how it looks like. So let's go to a local linear model. And that is sort of, let's have it like so. So here then we have n of ln. That will be the n. Then we have beta of ln. That's also empty. Now we can go on here. So the weights stay out there. But now the x is slightly different. So here we need a constant, this m dot add constant. To what? To, so here let's put it local x, which is x minus x. Okay. Add a constant to local x. Now we have to get the parameters right. Okay? So that's m underline ln. And we also need the beta ln. Is there somebody who uses Windows? Do we have Windows users? You are. You know the shortcuts of Control Alt and arrow up? There's something here. For example,
So it is like it's with the power.
did we turn on?
Yeah, it's like turn off all the block.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
So here, let's do the following. Control Alt. For example, in this line where your cursor is. Add to these twos and arrow up. And you will copy it. Your Windows people. Yeah, well, that's a nice word. Shortcut. I use it a lot. Alright. Let me write it here. So let's control Alt.
block and you highlight them and do that, then you get a copy of them. That makes you a lot faster with program. I don't know the Mac shortcuts. And so here then we have beta 2 with the same H. So I will have it like so. Let's see. Alright, so that is good. Let's PLT plot X value and you see? Just beautiful. I like that. I so much like this. So. Call this D because later, so this is C because I use C somewhere else. Let's call it con. So that with the other variable doesn't make sense. So what I want to do is, I want to plot this on top of this curve. Right? So because this is the theoretical marginal effect, this is the estimated marginal effect. This is how close they are. Yeah? So how close these guys are to each other. And then we can do, let's call it theoretical marginal effect theory. Right, so that will be B times x1 plus 2c times x1 is equal to no, it's B 2c x1 x1 plus 3d x1
is with the
Once you're ready, let me know.
thầy có làm gì?
So everybody has it. Yeah? All right. Well, let's now look at these graphs, all right? I mean, the estimation we looked at, so that's sort of out. But here, this orange line is a theoretical marginal effect. Alright? So, which is sort of, I took a derivative like so. Alright? And the orange, the blue one is the estimated marginal effect using the local linear, which is essentially the derivative that we have. Right? So that's local. Because at each point here we fit a line, sort of local, simple line. And exactly at that point where we do the estimation for each point, then the slope that I collected here, right? So that's the slope. These are the parameters. You have a constant and you have a slope. That's the second one. The slope becomes essentially the local linear slope. And local linear means that at that point that you sort of tangent the line. Right? And that becomes the slope. And we plot it and we say, so it's somehow very similar to the
theoretical marginal effects, which is interesting. Essentially, this is what we are making of. All right. But of course, these methods work when you have a lot of data points. No? You need to have sort of a data-rich environment. It's not 1, 2, 3 few data points, but rather some thousands. So you can indeed reliably estimate. So if you remember in the very beginning, when we started this, I told you about the nearest neighbor method. And I didn't need the method. We don't know how to implement it right now. But I want to do. Alright, so here, let's take all this, sort of find Control C, and then I will go into a new file, and I don't need the local linear. Alright, so I will have the same thing together with the local linear. Alright. Right. And to do the local linear, then we can do the programming on ourselves. So we are at each point, and then look how many points are close. Okay, to that. And I mean, to do this, well, if you want to do the program, at times you may want to indeed do that or see how close the points are. When it comes to sort of doing calculations, let's say these are the observation, x, and that's the point at which you want to calculate. Take an absolute value and sort it. Sort these from the smallest to largest and pick the first 5, 10, k years later. And that would be those will be the points that you need. But of course, you have to keep track of the location of these. Right? So once you sort them, then you need to know which point was there, and that would be the sort of easiest, sort of very easy. Or we do some package. Right? I think that's enough to do sort of programming on our own. We can go to Scalearn. Right? And the Scalearn has a section which is called neighbors. Right? And then from that, then we import k near neighbor address essentially. So you know the classifier. Classifier is for what? Classification problems. Which is also very interesting, actually. Right? So you find that. I have a master student actually works with that, but with minute data. And then he tries to, that's sort of, it's about goal. And he uses, say, 60 minutes data to do prediction for the next 10 minutes by finding some patterns, whether they sort of, that's the same classifier that we have here. So whether, say, the stock in this last hour are going down, if they were going down and or sort of they are starting to come up, or they were going up all the time, maybe they will continue going up. So there are certain patterns that one can indeed classify using this single classifier. Maybe you can build it there a little bit yourself, but we do the k-nearest neighbor for this same data. So let's do that. Let's add, so that is this, before plotting. Let's do the KNN estimator. Right? And that's not actually hard. The only thing that we need is just to define a model. Alright. Let's define the model, so model KNN. Alright. And well, here we just bring the K nearest neighbor the regressor. Right? And then we have to define how many neighbors. And if I have 10, then here we would say the number of neighbors, so n neighbors is equal to k, and that will be a model. Alright, so let's bring that in. And that is our model. Okay. And then let's fit it. So we fill it with first comes the x, and then comes the y. As simple as that. So that is what we fit as well.
actually do it as a function. Just define a K and N estimator. Right? Let's say it takes X, it takes Y, and it takes K as an input. Right, that's better. So that we can actually play around with that. There you go. Alright, so that is what we have. And let's also pass the X values. Some X values. That we have. And here we would say for X in X value, do the following. So you do the fit once, and we are happy with. But now we need to do the prediction. So here, Y test K nearest neighbor, let it be an empty list. And then here we would say Y test KN, the atom to the end of it, model, that's already fitting. K, model underline, K and N. We need a prediction, so we say let's predict for us this happens. And return Y test K. Right, that makes sense to you? Look over here. Well, this function actually takes K, the number of neighbors that's here. This is how we fit. So if you find the model, so let's say near K near neighbors regressor. This is the number of neighbors and I'm not sure if X comes first or Y comes first. Oh, X comes first. So the shortcut for seeing the source in your Windows is Control G. I don't know the shortcut in Windows. So if you want the source, you sort of highlight that. You Control G, then you see the source. You need ChatGPT. I hate it. So first context equals black. And then we have this. Excellent. Now we need the fitted values from K and N. So K and N fitted is equal to K and N underline S. Evaluate the X and Y and K, say N. Let's call it M. And X values. What is wrong? Oh, this I call KK. Ah. Now it should be good. Shape your data, alright, so we will shape the data. X reshape is equal to, for whatever reason, doesn't like it.
that's just the wording which is here. Let's add it and let's see. See the estimate. Hopefully it will work. I don't know. Scatters, here we have X1. And no, it doesn't accept mine. It's not actually a secret wording. It doesn't like mine. It doesn't, I don't know the, you see my mistake here. Maybe this is, that's normal. So this, let's reshape that too, but that is not relevant. I think I should have stopped teaching. And then go home. Expect the 2D array data scalable. Yeah.
Reshape.
Maybe it doesn't accept this.
learn from my problem. So here, this predict will not predict for a point, right? So it needs a sort of a, well, sort of something that is a two-dimensional one. I was passing one by one. I should have actually added it as a one by one value, right? Then it would have been alright. So it would have been two-dimensional. But first I had the loop, and that was sort of causing problems because it was saying, look, I mean, you are giving me a one-dimensional array. I should have changed it into two-dimension, so reshaped it to so that the shape is 1, 1 as a tuple. It would have worked. But now it's alright. So now we can plot. Alright, so let's do that. And let's see. And let's change this to what color do we like? Blue. So look, this is the red one is our KNN that we have seen so far. And now I got the KNN also right. And this green guy is the K nearest neighbor. So what it does is that it estimates at one point and then finds the 10 nearest values, takes an average. Correct? So goes to the other value, then 10, so on and so forth. So if I increase this, all right, and let's do it with 20. All right, so let's do it with 20. And that is 20. And that is 20. Now I'm running out of the colors, but you can always use black. And then let's see how does that look like. Right, so that sort of becomes a little bit more, well, a little smoother, right? Not much. All right. And then you see the problems with the ends. So that sort of gets totally off. So, so if I decrease it to 1 point, all right, so just 1 or 2 or 3, then the bias will reduce, all right? But then when the variance becomes large, so K is like the bandwidth as we had before. So if K is larger, then you will have larger points and you use for your calculation of the averages, and so on and so forth. But K nearest neighbor is nice, simple, right? So it's a very simple indeed approach to do the calculations and understanding is very easy. So I use it always to start talking about sort of this non-parametric stuff, saying, so be local, right? But then another Watson is more interesting in the sense that when you have, well, here you can also choose K using a leave one out approach. So you leave one out, do the estimation, and then as we did before, for K equal 2, 3, or 20, and then you will have a best value that you have here for the carriers. All right. So I have some more minutes, but I don't know what to do with you. And no, I can open new discussions. I don't have any problems. I need a good big chunk of time so I can explain things as I want. But let's maybe talk a little bit. Is there any? I just want that you help me maybe to do something which is related to the Vietnamese social system, or maybe finance, or I don't know, economics, something. Which is sort of, you have two variables and you want to sort of estimate their relationship non-parametric. Is there something that you have ever thought of and we could get data for? You understand?
Yeah.
I want to do, well, I can't do a lot of exercises. But I thought maybe I'd do something that comes from you. Right? Maybe you have had some bachelor thesis that you did some regressions on them. Sure, we will do. Okay. So you want that we take the Vietnamese stock market, and what do we do with that? What is it called, the index? The index.
Yeah.
That's
should be freely available, right? And what do you want to do with that? Sure, you can. I mean, the shape of the prices, so that's the price index. Let's say it starts somewhere and then comes down, and there's a lunch break for some time, 3 hours or so. You have, then afterwards it sort of goes up and then the market's closed. So you open, you have a lunch break, and then market's closed, right? You want to understand the shape of it? Some prices, it's very hard.
Not like daily one, but like the daylight day. It's not like within one day.
So we look at the closing price, for example. right? On a daily basis. And then that's a price. Right? So prices are hard to analyze. We know price because they are integrated of order one, by one. Right? So maybe we should look at, say, I wanted actually something more not so finance, right? So because I will do finance, I will do and regressions in a non-parametric way. But some other issues, something else that you should have had some questions in your mind ever, social. For example, what is the effect of child care? And government gives child care here. So if you are pregnant, right, then you give the birth to a child. Then, but you were working before, then what happens? You keep your job, right? So you will be paid maternity leave. Right? How long is it?
6 months.
Oh, it's so short. And it was only 6 months. And was it ever before longer?
I don't know whether the companies even now I don't work much, I don't have much work experience, but like they avoid hiring people that have a plan to be pregnant.
They don't want to be pregnant.
Yeah, they want to hire pregnant people because they don't want to pay for people who leave for a pregnancy.
Alright, but I mean, let's say, when did it actually come this into effect? Well, it should have come sometime, let's say 1992, I don't know, some number. And then before maybe it was longer. So if it becomes shorter, then it will have an effect on childbirth. Right? So you would say, alright, well then 6 months I can't stay home long, and then maybe this policy actually had an effect on childbirth. I don't know. Alright, maybe not. So I'm actually looking for something maybe from you that you have said the time dimension, some policy was implemented, that we had some childbirth here, and then childbirth after. Let's say. And then we'll understand what is happening here. Was it actually a drop? The drop was a sharp drop, because that's a function. Or was it something like smoothly coming down? Or else that would be different. If it had an effect which was both just came and then came down, or maybe I don't think. Right? Right. And then they warm you up. Oh, alright, so I thought maybe you have something. Let me take a look at the assignments that you have. So that was this PDF estimation which we did. Alright. That is something which you can do. Alright, so for yourself. So that is allows with what you just told us. Good. So here on the assignment page, there is a sheet which is called data campaign. Right, so that's a big data. And that's a big Excel sheet. Let me just tell you what it is so that when you go home or when you have time, then you could do some exercises with that. So this Excel file looks like so. So there are different sheets. Right? So this is, for example, DAX. That is monthly DAX. And so these are the components of DAX. So all of the
values that you have in the sort of components that are in the DAX, right? So DAX components. And these are monthly. So you also have the daily DAX. So you have the NYSE, so that's sort of the market index. Or well, let's say we look at the S&P 500. So that is the daily S&P 500. So all of the components that are here, that are existing there. And the first column, this one, that is SPX. So that's the S&P 500 index.
And then the data start from beginning of 2014 till June, July, sometime now, all right? So in 2025, so they are dated.
And well, these are all of the components.
Well, this is, for example, the lager, the apples. This is apple.
Where is American Airlines?
I know. So there are all of the components that we have here. That's ABNP.
All right, okay, well, it doesn't matter. So what I want that you do is, in this exercise, is that you run a CAPM regression. All right, so for the CAPM regression, then you need a risk-free rate. A risk-free rate, then you can get from Fed.
So I think I wrote here so what the ticker is. Let's go there. So that's the assignment. So you can use the 3 months T-bill.
Alright, so that's a treasury bill returns. And then
Well, you also use sort of you get the data from Fed.
you can use Pandas data reader to connect to Fed and then fetch the data. And the ticker is DTB3. Alright, that's the daily treasury bills 3 months. Alright, so you can get that. So when you get this guy, then you will get some NAN values. NANs, I think they're generally on weekends. For whatever reason, for some of weekends, Fed didn't remove the NANs, but rather just have NANs. So you should remove them, sort of take care of them somehow. And some days of the week also there are few NANs which are during the week. Correct? So for those days, then you can assume, for example, let's say here was 2%, and that's a Wednesday, and then here you have 3%. It doesn't jump that much, but let's say 2.1%. Right? So here you can assume that the return was the same as before. Right? So here you can actually forward feed the series. I mean, in Pandas, so that will be very easy. So you can forward feed those NAND values. And once you do that, then you can calculate the premiums for the market index, which is a standard, sort of the S&P 500, and take some assets. Actually, here I thought of few. So that's NVIDIA, which is just going up and down. All right, so that's sort of very much non-linear. All right. So there is Berkshire Hathaway. So I mean that's sort of very stable and that's nice. Sort of its beta is not very high. It's something which one can see of it as a long-term investment. Right? So that's sort of fine. Right? And then there is Coca-Cola, which is also fine. It's also something that one can earn on in long term. So there are sort of 3 different assets. You can also do some other things for yourself, right? So now I want that you do the regression, the CAPM regression, using OLS, and using the whole sample, right? And you also do the CAPM regression using Nadaraya-Watson. Alright? Now, we have minutes. So the Nadaraya-Watson you can do in 2 different ways. Alright. So, number 1 is the following. And let's say we have Y, this is the asset return, T, is
to alpha plus beta market excess return plus ER. Right, so here I don't mind for the moment that this may be endogenous and so on and so forth. Later we will go ahead and do factor models and sort of reduce the homogeneity or the bias problem. So what I want that you do is that you estimate this beta as a time varying component. Right? So it means that when you do the regressions, right? So here, so the x-axis, well here you have 1, so then you say this is 1. There is an x, right? So that's 3 dimensions. You have x, you have y, and then you also have the time. Right? So you can believe that Watson do in such a way that weights come from time. Right? But so to speak that when you do the estimation, well, you should do an estimation of that. So beta, let's say hat, for a specific time t, that would be summation of w's, alright, so wi's, with another Watson regression, where
Why?
the weights actually are on time. Alright. For example, let's say you are at this time t, then the weights that you have is called WT. WT will be the PDF of the standard norm of the kernel, or of the vector t, which is from period 1 up to the end of the sample, minus this t divided by h to the power of not to the power. So that's simply the curve divided by h. Alright. So that will be how you pass the weights to the weighted least scores. Alright. So in such a way that so the OLS regression will have betas be localized in time. Alright. So to speak, this beta will be estimated for this time. Like sort of giving weights to the observations which are too far in the past, smaller weights, and those that are too far in the future, also a small weight. And those that are closer, a larger weight. Alright. So that's a little bit different from what we did now. Alright. But also I'm doing this, I'm telling you to tell you that look, you can actually be flexible in terms of how you localize. Right? You can also localize that on x, the value of x, the way we just did it. Where beta becomes a function of x, that's also doable, such that you actually do the estimation of the betas as a function of x. So x changes, beta changes. So in the assignment actually here, I have that you use a local linear, alright? And then you do an OLS. Right? So OLS is just be one number. A local linear will be essentially moving up and down. So there will be some time variation that you will have in beta. Please have a go at it. Right? So think how you could potentially implement that, and then tomorrow when I come, then we can discuss it. Alright? And that's it for today. So tomorrow I will, apart from this, do a little bit of forecasting. Right? So some little exercise with forecast. That will be fun.